What's up, guys? Michael here. Today, we're talking about Marvel's attempt to make it to the God tier, Eternals. The latest film is perhaps the biggest expansion of the MCU since things went intergalactic. Not only are we now dealing with heroes, villains, and talking raccoons, but with bona fide gods. Plus, they brought in Oscar winner Chloe Zhao to direct, so we were pretty stoked. But does Eternals actually take advantage of this heavenly new perspective? We'll find out in this Wisecrack Quicktake on Eternals. Are humans worth saving? And of course, spoilers ahead. But now I'd like to tell you about hats and shirts that are literally very close to my heart. That's right, it's Wisecrack merch. We've got it, and hopefully you want it. If we may be so bold, our merch is pretty cool. Pick up a hat, mug, or tee with this colorful Wisecrack logo, and you'll also be sporting artwork by Mike Perry. You may know his work from a little show called Broad City. Or, if you're a fan of our podcast, like Culture Binge, Show Me the Meaning, or The Squanch, you can pick up some of our new logo stickers. Wherever you stick them, everyone who sees them will know that you're a fellow expert on how to be good at online dating, cool new movies, and or Pickle Ricks respectively. Visit wisecrack.store to check out all these sweet merch we have on offer. We have an exciting holiday drop coming soon too, and we can't wait for you to see it. But for real, we truly appreciate all your support. Nobody rocks that monocle-clad donkey better than you. Okay, back to the show. Eternals revolves around a group of immortal warriors sent to Earth by their god/celestial Arishem to protect and guide humanity. However, they discover that an unborn celestial buried inside Earth will eventually burst out, thus destroying all of humanity. Even worse, the Eternals also learn that they've done this to a bunch of other planets, with Arishem wiping their memories after each mission, which is a lot to take in. Now that they know their destructive purpose, the Eternals have to decide, should they carry out Arishem's plan? If the celestial is born, it will create tons of new life and new planets, which is good. However, it'll also annihilate all of humanity, which is bad. The team is ethically split. Cersei and her pals take a stance that's similar to the deontological ethics of Immanuel Kant. For Kant, ethics is about only doing something if you'd want your actions to become a universal moral law, and he offers something called the principle of humanity to help make these decisions slightly easier. He says that we should act in such a way that you treat humanity never merely as a means, but always at the same time as an end. Which means that the value of human life should be the key factor in our ethical decisions. And for many of the Eternals, the unique moral value of humanity is something worth fighting for. Conversely, Right-Eyed Icarus takes a more utilitarian perspective. He believes that sacrificing humanity is worth it for the sake of creating billions more lives across the galaxy. Basically, it's okay to sacrifice the potential pleasure of one group for the sake of creating happiness and pleasure for a larger group. However, classical utilitarianism a la John Stuart Mill was only really talking about human happiness, not the potential happiness of yet to exist space creatures. So Icarus's stance isn't classically utilitarian. Icarus falls more in the realm of contemporary utilitarian philosopher and king of unrealistic examples, Peter Singer. Unlike the old school utilitarians, Singer believes that non-human life forms are equally worthy of ethical consideration, thus his militant veganism and stance towards animal liberation. Presumably, celestials and deviants and space creatures that Icarus wants to protect would also count. Since the unborn celestial will ultimately create more pleasure and happiness for more beings in the universe, Icarus is firmly team space god. But the film eventually seems to side with Cersei and thus Kant, arguing that the cosmic uniqueness of humanity is worth preserving. And this fits with Marvel's larger ethos. Even as the MCU is expanded to include Asgardians, aliens, and interdimensional beings, humanity has always remained central to its universe.
Thanos erased half of the universe, but the people of this planet brought everyone back with a snap of a finger.
However, the existence of Arishem and the Celestials actually presents the Eternals with an even tougher moral quandary. For 7,000 years, they have been blindly following their deity's designs. Now that they know what he's up to, they have to decide whether to continue to obey him. Basically, they have to decide whether to dethrone a god or not. A problem which sadly never came up during Sunday school. And you know where this is going. Like all Marvel movies, Eternals concludes with a bout of superpowered fisticuffs. Cersei and co attempt to stop the Celestial's birth, while Icarus and Sprite try to protect Arishem's plan. And Kingo just kind of bounces. On a deeper level, the factions are fighting about whether a person's duty to God outweighs their duty to humanity. In Icarus's view, duty to God comes first. and to say otherwise is pure blasphemy. For Circe and Ajax, it's worth rebelling against a god to protect mankind, especially when your god is super imperfect and regularly sacrifices billions of lives. All in all, Circe's dilemma suggests that taking your moral guidance from a higher power might be kind of sus. On this point, Eternals might have found a fan in Friedrich Nietzsche. He was all about critiquing how religion can turn people against the world and their fellow humans. Nietzsche believed that Christianity could lead a person to value things that were not of this world over those within it, like valuing heaven over earth. He thought that once your hypothetical afterlife and divine daddy's opinion become more important to you than the lives of your fellow humans, you can justify doing all kinds of horrible things. This is why he thinks we need to create our own moral values that are distinct from those offered via religion. Circe and co. have found that out firsthand. Following Arishem's teachings with fundamentalist fervor has led them to annihilate countless planets. The destruction has been justified on the basis that these lost lives were less important than the Celestials. The film, like Nietzsche, seems to be saying when your moral compass is dictated by something outside this world, it's liable to lead you to some pretty dark places. And in a Nietzschean sense, this leads some of the Eternals to create their own new values. Phastos, Circe, and the others choose to reject Arishem's values and commit to protecting humanity. Their choice is heavily influenced by their intimate connection to Earth and its inhabitants. The once cynical Phastos has found love and family, turning the principle of humanity into his #1 priority. Circe has also enjoyed romance and developed love for humanity at large. Conversely, the characters who never felt at home in human society remain willing to follow Arishem's plan. Sprite's childlike form made it difficult for her to connect with humans, and she wound up resenting them. Similarly, the floating Icarus remains at a remove from Earth, merely watching over it from above, making it hard to form actual connections with those stuck on the ground. Interestingly, Kingo, who has spent decades as a beloved Bollywood star, is caught in the middle. He agrees, at least intellectually, with the value of destroying Earth to create new worlds. Still, he isn't quite willing to kill his friends in service of his god. Instead, he nopes out right before the climactic battle. Here, both sides are defined by their loyalty to or rebellion against God. However, their ethics are also based on their relationship to humanity. Those with an emotional connection to humans rebel against Arishem, while those without continue to follow him. And in siding with Circe and co., the movie seems to be saying that you cannot base your moral beliefs solely on something which exists out of the world, i.e., God. That's because your morals can't be formed in a vacuum. They're always informed by life experience. Justifying your actions as the will of God is simply a way of offloading your responsibility for the choices you make. Our sense of value will ultimately always come from the flawed, mortal, messily human perspective we have down here on Earth. It might not be as clean as getting our ethics etched in stone tablets straight from the mountaintop, but it's the only real morality we've got. Eternals brings up some interesting questions about the value of human life and how much we actually matter in the eyes of the cosmos, and yet it never really comes to any satisfying answers. Part of this is because Eternals waits way too long to reveal its core moral dilemma. For the sake of springing a surprise on the audience, it sacrifices our chance to see the characters really wrestle with the issue. What's more, we don't really see characters morally deliberate about the quandary. They all seem to have made up their minds. Watching these thousands of years old relationships crumble should be devastating, but the film's more focused on getting to the next CGI battle. Even after Icarus is defeated, he doesn't reflect on his choices or question his total devotion to a flawed god. Instead, he just yeets himself into the sun. Eternals pushes the MCU into the realm of gods and immortals, allowing it to tell stories that stretch across eons and ask important questions about life itself. However, it never really finds a way to dramatize the conflict between blasphemers and fundamentalists. As a result, it ultimately adds up to a bunch of very charismatic actors beating up CGI squid dogs across multiple millennia. And while that's a bummer, it's still cool that the MCU was willing to break from the established formula. And maybe next time they ask big questions like this, they'll dig a little deeper in search of the answer. But what do you guys think? Is Eternals right to value human life over a little baby celestial, or are numbers more important than feelings? Let us know what you think in the comments. Big thanks as always to our patrons, and be sure to listen to our podcast. Hit that subscribe button like you're turning a god into a giant rock, and don't forget to ring that bell. And as always, thanks for watching. Later.